The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz along with my co-host Tony Palmeri. On this edition of Eye on Oshkosh, we are very pleased to welcome a special guest. She has driven all the way from Chippewa Falls to be here, and the reason that she is coming to us from Chippewa Falls is because our former mayor Steve Hintz is involved in some Chippewa Falls politics, and our guest, Jody Thompson, who is just merely a citizen activist who's got a website. We'll be putting that up a little later. She's been very involved in some of the things that Steve Hintz is doing over there, is rather upset about some things that are going on, and wanted to come and chat with us. So that being said, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for driving on a drizzly afternoon from clear across the state practically. So we're very pleased that you're here. Why don't we start by you just kind of telling us a little bit about what is going on in Chippewa Falls, just sort of a Reader's Digest version.
Okay. Our council had been talking about hiring a city administrator, creating a position. We'd been a weak mayor, strong council system for years. They went ahead and contracted a study with Public Administration Associates, and
that's Steve Hintz's
Steve
company.
Hintz's company.
Mm-hmm.
And there was already some red lights kind of going off about some of the things that were happening, some of the way it was being handled. Some of us started doing some research on our own, which is how I ran across you guys. We were just looking on the internet, trying to figure out who these people were who were having so much impact in our community, and it really seemed to some of us that they were having more influence in our affairs than the actual citizens, and some of us were really uncomfortable. And as time went by, more and more people got uncomfortable with how things were being handled. There is a core group of us that is doing a lot of research, really active, trying to speak up in meetings. We've got kind of a legal action pending, and there's a recall that's just been started.
Okay. All right, we'll get to some of all this. Let's just back up for a second.
I just want to clarify one thing, though. When you say a weak mayor, strong council form of government, why don't you explain what you have? Because we have a weak mayor here.
Okay.
In that our mayor does nothing more than he acts as president of the Common Council. He pushes the buttons to turn on microphones, cuts ribbons, greets people. Your weak mayor, as it's called, a weak mayor, really has much stronger powers.
Right. I guess quite a bit less than maybe a strong mayor system, but it seems just from anecdotal evidence and things people say, the mayor does still have quite a bit of influence on what happens.
Including veto power,
Yeah,
correct?
veto power. We have 7 aldermen, and they're run through wards. And I'm sorry.
So it's district representation.
Right, right.
With it's a mayoral aldermanic form of government.
Right, and our mayor is directly elected. I think yours is more like our council president, I think.
Yeah.
Is that kind of?
Yeah, elected, but essentially a council president.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So our council president would be chosen from within our council.
And you have 7 council members.
Right.
And then this mayor.
Right.
Okay. So now we have here in Oshkosh a professional city manager.
Right.
Who's hired by the council.
Okay.
Chippewa Falls has never had
a manager.
A manager or an administrator.
No.
So Mr. Hintz was brought up there to search for a full-time administrator?
Yeah, somehow there was a city administrator from Oshkosh Falls who had heard, he says he heard about an article written by our reporter in the municipality, which is the League of Municipalities newsletter, and I don't know the history of that, if that's, he sent a fairly inflammatory email to our city clerk, and that kind of got around to some people who became even more concerned. That seems to be the contact point with Stephen Hintz and his PAA.
Why was Steve Hintz and his organization brought in? Do
This
you have
guy,
any idea?
yeah, this guy says, I would suggest that you contact Stephen Hintz, puts his email address in here, and then gives a full sales pitch on why this council would want to work with Stephen Hintz, and gives a real, it was a really alarming email. He encourages, I feel really he encourages the council to ignore the will of the people. Specifically gives them advice that if they put it to a referendum, the majority of people will say, no, we don't need a city administrator, and really discourages that. It was a pretty influential email, I think.
So for people who want the administrator,
Right.
what have been their reasons? Hasn't Chippewa Falls been run for many, many years without one?
Yeah, we had.
So what were they, was there a budget crisis? What was going on?
We have a budget shortfall right now. There have been a few people who have said that it's a manufactured crisis. I don't have the budget expertise to make a personal evaluation on that. That is a rumor. We had a lot of stability. We'd had the same mayor for 12 years. There were little flaps here and there, but I think everybody was overall pretty satisfied. I'll probably get some rebuttals on that, but she retired, and then there are, I mean, statewide deficits and budget problems. I mean, this is normal. People are talking about combining services and stuff like that.
It's happening in all cities, yeah.
That's a statewide thing. That has really, in my experience, been pumped up to show almost a negligence of the past administration, and past councils have basically screwed up. We have a mess. It's way overdue to have a professional. This is what comes of having amateurs in office, sticking their fingers in pies.
Right. Oshkosh had this debate in 1955 and 56.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the pitch. So there was an actual budget shortfall. Several people do seem to feel that that was kind of pumped up to be the selling point, to look for an administrator. I think there was, I'm sure there was a group of people who just naturally think it's a nice idea. They're just going to be out there. But as far as the push, there's also something of a buzz that some of the department heads are sick and tired of having any Joe who's elected off the street who could be a complete incompetent or, just kind of a pain, who doesn't know how to run the department, sticking their fingers in their pies, and that's getting to be a problem. Always.
There may be a little truth to that, I suppose, but you said that they're trying to say that the form of government is the reason for the budget shortfall. Well, I don't care what, this is a little editorial on my part here, but I don't care what form of government you have. You still have a city council making final budgetary decisions. And if that council makes decisions that put you into a budgetary shortfall, that is not the fault of a mayor, and that's not the fault of a city manager. That's the council's fault. So what is their argument about that? How do they substantiate what they want to do with that argument in mind?
I'm not really sure I can argue that point. I personally feel that logic has been lacking in the sales pitch here. I don't think that their arguments always follow. I experience them as largely talking points. I have personally raised issues in council meetings, as have other people. The councilmen will stare down at their tables, wait till you're done, and then maybe repeat a talking point exactly that you heard 3 months ago, never addressing the issue at all. So I can't answer how they would answer that. I just,
So now,
it's kind of not there.
all right. So now a group of
The
citizens.
answer isn't there.
All right, group of citizens, including yourself, tried to get a referendum question on a ballot. Correct.
Right,
Now,
right.
what would the referendum have done? What was the goal? What is the goal of the
Okay,
referendum?
the referendum would have said either that they'd stand down and wait 2 years before establishing a city administrator position, or put it to the vote of the people, which is what we really wanted, because there's a lot of, I think, misinformation that the people who are against the administrator position are in a definite minority. I don't think that's the case. We are a small group of troublemakers, is
Right,
kind
all
of been
that,
the
yeah,
characterization.
Yeah, I get that here
Yeah,
with
we'll
some
get-
of my
yeah,
cronies.
right,
We get that all
So,
the time.
but the group that wants the referendum did get enough signatures, correct?
Right,
To
and
get a
we-
referendum question on the ballot.
Right.
So then you present this referendum question to the city council, correct?
right.
What did they do with it?
They said that they put it up to the city attorney, and she said that this was an administrative act. Creating the city administrator was administrative, not legislative, and our referendum had no clout because of that.
All right, so then a few people went to seek the Attorney General's opinion on this, correct?
Yeah, it was actually Representative Jeff Wood.
Representative Jeff,
made a
okay.
request.
He took the referendum and he took it to the Attorney General to see what she
Right.
said. And what did the Attorney General say?
That the council was in the wrong,
The council
and
was-
should have accepted the petition for referendum.
Okay, and then, so now the city council has an opinion, informal opinion from the
Right.
Attorney General, Peggy Lautenschlager,
Right.
saying that they screwed up,
Right.
that they should have allowed this to go out for a vote. Now, is it true that at that moment the council said, well, she's just another lawyer?
Right. That's just one lawyer's opinion.
That's exactly what is going on here
Yeah.
with our situation, which we have talked about previously.
Right, our council illegally waived the bid.
Okay.
We sought an opinion in Madison. The Attorney General said, looks like they broke the law. She's just an attorney.
Right.
They're just lawyers down there.
Right.
So now some citizens, though, in Chippewa Falls are not just standing for this, correct? They're now trying to go to court.
There are two, yeah.
Okay, what are the court cases about?
The court case was two people tried to get a restraining order to stop them from going ahead because the council put a big rush on. Then after the April 5th election, everybody who got elected had spoken out against the administrator itself as a concept, or even if they said we maybe could tolerate this idea at some point in the future, the way it's been handled has been a complete disaster. And they'd vote to repeal it, or any number of things, but they all were quite outspoken against it. So in between the April 5th election and the April 19th time that the new council came in, there was a big rush to hire the guy. So Barb Davidson and Don Cooper tried to get a restraining order to stop that.
They're two
action.
citizens?
Two
or-
citizens,
Okay.
and they had one day in court trying to represent themselves, and that was, I think, a little overwhelming. And I believe, based on something that the mayor said, he told the city attorney to contact the League of Municipalities lawyer and consult on this, and nobody says that's a lobbyist with an agenda.
Right.
So, I mean, the attorney is going to have a specific viewpoint. Anyway, I believe it was the the League of Municipalities attorney that came up with what I view as a loophole, that it was in fact administrative because they voted to not accept the referendum. And then right after that, they voted to change the ordinance creating the position. So to us, it looked like they did a legislation after they threw out the referendum. The attorney says that wasn't the point of legislation. The point of legislation occurred months earlier when they passed the budget that had a line item in it saying city administrator $125,000. That was the moment of legislation. So anything after that was then administration.
But the Attorney General didn't say this.
Oh, no.
Did the Attorney General's office know about the line item in the budget?
No,
Okay.
no.
That may
Yeah.
or may not change
Right.
their opinion, I don't know, but,
Right.
because I'm not a lawyer.
No.
Oh, you mean when Jeff Wood wrote, no.
Yeah.
There's a part in Statute 920 which is the direct legislation statute, and it says that the citizens' right to petition their government is not supposed to be applied in a manner that is unduly difficult or prohibitive.
Okay.
That would seem the people who contacted Jeff Wood himself, none of us could anticipate that the legislation had occurred months earlier.
Right, of course.
We even petitioned after the budget had been accepted. We had no clue. I think that presupposes a certain amount of legal knowledge that is just way beyond anything a citizen could have.
That's an excellent point.
And so I think that whole argument is just really abusive to the whole concept.
And it just seems just troubling that the council would not want to allow the people to speak. I mean, on something, this is fairly
Yeah.
monumental. I mean, to go from a system that has never had a full-time appointed manager or administrator, to move into that is a fairly monumental thing. And to say that the public doesn't have a right to vote on this,
Right.
that doesn't seem doesn't it fail the basic test of fairness?
Yeah. What, so Steve Hintz's role in all of this, what role has he been playing?
That was not easy to ascertain at first, and that was how I found you guys, was just doing internet searches, trying to figure out, first of all, even the name Stephen Hintz didn't show up. It was Public Administration Associates. And there was a study that was being done by some people in Oshkosh, and then there was hiring that was going to be done by people in Oshkosh. And I was personally wondering, what's with Oshkosh? I mean, we couldn't get our council to listen to us, and yet they were listening to people in Oshkosh. So that led to a lot of hours on the internet trying to figure out what that was all about. It seems to me that somebody has been, or maybe several somebodies have kind of been encouraging our council to listen to them more than the people. What you had said, why wouldn't you want to check with your constituents? I don't get that. I mean, if people want to have a career in politics, why would they want to alienate people to that degree? Why would they want to take the risk?
Well, and isn't it just fair to the administrator? I mean, if you're going to hire an administrator, don't you want that person to have a mandate from the people?
I would think
I
at
mean,
least
to
a comfort
say,
level.
I mean, it's your council to say to citizens, we're going to force a position on you, whether you like it or not. That just seems like bad government.
Yeah, it does.
So does it sound like they were concerned that if the population did have a chance to vote on it, they probably would not want it?
Yeah, and that's what
And if
the email indicated.
and if the
Almost
peop-
don't
yeah.
let it go to a vote.
And if the people don't want it, then they shouldn't have it. Don't we call that small d democracy?
No, yeah.
But you haven't been getting that in Chippewa
No,
Falls.
not at all.
So where are we right now? April 5th were the elections, and you said from April 5th to April 19th, there was this mad rush of...
To get the guy hired.
So they did-
So he was in place so that the new council, I guess, couldn't.
Okay,
Muck it
so
up.
they did hire someone.
Right. He's not there yet. We have an interim who's kind of sitting there now.
Who brought the interim in?
Stephen Hintz, I guess. It was.
That's not surprising. I mean, he has worked in other communities, one of which I've covered for my career, and he helped to bring in an interim person there as well, and then helped to actually place the permanent administrator. It's over in the town of Menasha. But they seem to be fine with things over there, and they've always had a professional administrator, but they're a township too, which is quite different from a city. Now you mentioned that there's well, I guess let's go back to the lawsuit for a moment. So you said those two folks tried to basically represent themselves. It was kind of a daunting thing. What happened then? Is that just a dead issue?
I'm not in the lawsuit, and I haven't. They have a status conference, it's called, coming up on, I think it's the 18th, and I don't know what's going to happen with that. I'm not in on the lawsuit, and I don't know where they're going to go.
Okay.
I really don't.
What are some of the feelings from some of the other people? I mean, there's two people involved in a lawsuit on behalf of the whole city. It sounds like. You know, what are some of the other citizens saying?
Well, that depends on who you ask. If you are listening to the pro-administrator people, they would say it's a very small group of people who just don't get it, are over vocal, and are trying to cause trouble. Basically, are monkey wrenches in the system, trying to slow things down. We've had 2 former mayors, a couple of former aldermen. One of the former mayors was also a representative. they've all come out against this, saying we're having other workers laid off at the same time that they want to hire city administrators. A lot of people are offended just by that alone. That's not a time that you hire another boss when you're laying off guys.
Well, is it true that on April 5th, candidates that supported the position you're taking all got elected? Is that right?
Right.
So wouldn't that be a sign that you're not just a couple of isolated people?
Right. But it's still argued that we're in the minority. I just got that last week. Jody, don't you think maybe you're in the minority and you just don't get it?
Even though you just elected, how many people got elected on April 5th that share the position of...
Four. Four people. Everybody who was up for election criticized either they might maybe said maybe someday an administrator, or it's not an entirely horrible concept, or yes, there's trouble at City Hall because the job has really gotten overwhelming. The concept of a full-time mayor was never discussed.
Yeah.
And I don't have a really strong opinion. Mayor, administrator, keep it the same. We haven't even been able to have the opportunity to discuss that, really. It was just administrator, that's the deal.
So 4 of your 7 council members have said this is not a good idea.
Right. And those
yet
are the ones that got elected.
Steve Hintz and his group, they feel that this is the way to go. And how are they getting, if you've got a council, a majority of your council that's saying no, how is this even being allowed to happen?
Because that council has only met once and has had this current council, the current makeup, I have no idea where they're going to go. We've only had one meeting. I don't know where this is going to go. Everything I'm talking about is this past council. And everything was all in place. It's all the contracts are signed, everything is a done deal.
So this council can't reverse that?
Well, I think maybe they could, whether or not they'd go there.
Yeah.
Plus, they still have the 4 original people who I think would form a voting bloc. I really think they would. Then I think it's a question of how ugly and divisive you want it to get. The contract is signed, and I thought that was a particularly nice touch. Now there's a question of a buyout if you get rid of the guy, because
of course, yeah.
So that would be a huge expense and a waste of money, which is going to make the public less likely to, oh well, it was ugly, but it's done, so let's just live with it, I think.
Can you tell us a little bit about the search for the administrator? Now, it's my understanding from reading a couple of the Chippewa Falls Herald, is that your newspaper, that there were a couple of top candidates who withdrew. What happened there?
Well, it was narrowed down to 4 candidates.
All right, and how were these searches? Was the public invited into these searches?
No. It was 39 applicants. I have a copy of the agreement. It's kind of entertaining reading. My favorite clause is, this is the point at which the council takes me out to dinner with the candidates. The Stephen Hintz job candidate search contract. It's kind of he ran
the search.
Not just ran the search. He did it. They contracted a study where he went through our budget and was supposedly going to determine whether or not Chippewa Falls would benefit from a city administrator position, which I have compared in a council meeting to asking McDonald's, can we use your hamburgers? If the guy's job and livelihood comes from finding these men jobs, if you say, can we use a city administrator, he's going to say yes. So he went through the budget and submitted this huge report, of which I have not seen because it's fairly thick, outlining ways in which we could realign our government, and his words was current best practices, I think. One of these current best practices was to close a fire station and hire the city administrator, close the fire station. I mean, some of us were pretty upset about that. So PAA and Stephen Hintz they've had a hand in absolutely everything, from the original email onto how to write the ordinance, creating the administrator, doing the job search, putting the ads in the papers, talking to the candidates. It's in the contract that he goes and talks to the department heads and gets their views after they see the candidates, and then he interprets that to the council. The council doesn't talk directly to the department heads according to the, Stephen Hintz is basically determining the course of our future government, is how I view it.
So when the 39 candidates were narrowed down to 3 or 4,
it was 11 or something, and then
Okay.
there was some sort of videotaping process, and the council watched those tapes, and then it was narrowed again to 4, and somehow in there department heads did meet with some of the candidates, and 2 of them had legal conflicts with their previous jobs, and Stephen Hintz kind of parsed those little.
Yeah, one of them
explains
was accused of bid rigging.
He had left two jobs
Okay.
under unpleasant circumstances. One was a sex discrimination, sexual harassment type of a deal, and then the next one was the bid rigging thing. So he had 2 dark marks against him, and that was still okay.
The spin on that was, for the bid rigging, that's New York, and they play hardball politics out there in New York.
It's the nature of the job. It's political.
Okay. And then there was another guy who had been asked to leave his previous position.
Yeah, I can't remember the details on
Something like
him.
that. Either you leave or you'll be fired.
Something like that,
Is
I
that
think.
the sexual harassment thing?
No.
No.
Okay.
That 2 of those were to the one guy that they were going to give the job.
Right.
The 3rd guy, I am told, was scared away by the unpleasant citizens.
The gadflies. You scared.
Yes.
You scared. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I also know that the administrator that, it seems to me that Steve Hintz's organization may have been involved in a search twice in the town of Menasha. And I say town because we've got a city of Menasha also. The first administrator that he brought in also was asked to leave or kind of forced to resign because of sexual harassment type things, exchanging emails with a lot of the female employees, including one of the police officers in the town. It was very ugly. It made headlines all over the valley here. And so that was the candidate that they brought in. So,
Okay.
you know, it makes one wonder if he's really doing such a crackerjack job in screening applicants. I mean, I realize you can have a bad apple in any barrel, but, you know, just some food for thought. So there's a lawsuit and a status hearing that's coming up in a few days from when we're taping this. You said there's also a recall effort that's underway. Tell us
Right.
about that. What's going on there?
That was just filed last week, and it's against the former council president, who is not the current council president, and that's in progress right now. They're collecting signatures, so
And this was a fellow who supported the administrator position.
yeah, really enthusiastically,
Okay.
right.
And so the grounds for recall are going to be that he just didn't listen to the public?
Yeah, also there had been a fluoride issue, which is kind of a hot topic in Chippewa Falls. There are people who feel that fluoride is long overdue and that we're kind of remiss in not having it because everybody else does, and it's a health issue. I think Chippewa Falls, because one of our claims to fame, or one of the tourist things we have going, is purest water in the world.
You don't have fluoride in the water?
No, we haven't. And so there are a lot of people who really feel that that interferes with the pure water thing. And now, since time has passed, and there are people who, well, you have drug recalls and stuff, and people are more leery about putting things in the
Right.
water. So, I forgot.
This counselor.
Okay, right, okay.
He's for putting fluoride in the
He was
water?
for putting fluoride in the water, and I think that was when he first seriously alienated his constituents.
Oh, okay.
We had a referendum that was advisory, not binding, and it was 70% to 30 in to keep fluoride out.
Keep fluoride out.
And everybody who was on the council who wanted fluoride said, they made a statement, I'm in favor of it, but I'm going to vote with my constituents, but not the council president. He voted in opposition to his constituents, and so that, irritated them. And then there was a citizen, so we're in this time of financial crisis, and the council is going ahead and incurring expenses. a citizen survey, cost $10,000, which they then ignored completely, because that came out that most people were not in favor of a city administrator. Everybody overwhelmingly did not want police and fire cut, and the council was going ahead and doing things that were directly in opposition to the survey, which had cost $10,000, which isn't incredible when you're talking a budget of millions, but if we're in such a crunch. Then there was the Hintz study, that was $9,000, which actually I think was more of a proposal on how you can use my services. You use the word study, I think that implies objectivity, which there is no objectivity here. There is none. To say that anything that Hintz does is a study on government efficiency, that is just absolutely travesty. So there were, maybe some people would say minor expenses, but expenses incurred during this time of crisis that irritates. Laying off workers, firing people. When you're talking about hiring another boss, $125,000, that's inflammatory. So all of those things add up.
Although they ended up hiring someone, was it for $80,000 or $85,000?
Yeah, the actual budget package and stuff I think came, maybe it's like more around 110.
Okay.
So it is a little under
Right.
budget supposedly, which is supposed to be a huge selling point. I don't see it that way, but
The citizen survey that you said was done, Jody, how many people were actually surveyed? Do you know offhand?
no, I don't know the number, and that was controversial in itself. The survey was mailed to people's homes, and then you were supposed to mail it back in. It was one survey per household, so even that was kind of a conflict, you know. Who gets to answer the question? The husband, the wife, you have a adult child living at home, you know, maybe there's a...
There could be more than one voter in a household.
Yeah.
But one was sent to every household? Is that, or do you not know?
There were people that missed, and I guess you could call in and request one if you wanted one. And then some landlords were upset because they said, why was my tenant sent this when they, you know. So everything about the survey was kind of a controversy.
But everyone in the city
Had access to it.
Had
If they
access
didn't,
and
if they
had the
didn't get
ability to
it, they
vote.
could have turned it in or requested one.
And when you say it overwhelmingly showed that people didn't want this professional management and they didn't want police and fire cut, what do you, can you give us some numbers? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know if I said overwhelming, I shouldn't have said overwhelming. The fluoride survey was referendum
all right.
was overwhelming. I think the administrator feedback was pretty firm. I don't have the numbers memorized, but it was everything kind of broken down into 20s, like upper 20s. So you'd have, say maybe 27% or something that were very strongly opposed to a city administrator. Then another 20% that was moderately opposed. Then you had another group that had no opinion either way. And then you had maybe 25% or so that thought it was a good idea. So my interpretation of a feedback like that would be you have a quarter of the population at best who is actually in favor of this. That's another bit of evidence that would suggest that it's not just a small group of people. I mean, I don't think that just because it was broken down, they didn't say all the anti-administrators were around 50%, which would have really, if you'd added the two groups together, it would have been more like 50% to the 25% with another 25-ish somewhere in there, undecided. It was broken down into, you know, there's only the 25% who are very strongly opposed. There were another group that were moderately opposed.
Okay.
Now, Jody, in response to all that's going on in Chippewa Falls, you started a blog site.
Yeah, just at the end of March.
Okay, why did you start the site?
It was pretty disheartening to be sitting in that courtroom and see that level of hair splitting and loophole finding. I don't think that that's what government is supposed to be doing, finding ways to bamboozle the public and get around it. And that's really what a lot of us experienced. That isn't what the city attorney is there for, to figure out ways to
bamboozle,
to keep you down, to not let you have your say. It was really disheartening. When people collected those referendum signatures, for the petition to get it on a referendum.
Mm-hmm.
It was below zero, and we did it in a big rush over a weekend. It was miserable. And then to have that, like, oh, it was all a done deal, here's this loophole, let's grab at it, that was so discouraging.
Sure.
Sure,
to watch elected officials act
yeah.
with a complete contempt for democracy.
Yeah, it was really, and to be characterized as, to be called a gadfly.
I want to
to
urge everyone to go to Jody's site. I know we do have the address showing up on the screen at various points in the show, because your writing style, I mean, you're just kind of like the citizen activist. It's called the Side Street, correct?
Right.
Where'd you get that name from? Why the Side Street?
It just came to me, I guess, because I don't think really mainstream, maybe, I guess. I'm not a Main Street thinker, maybe.
Yeah.
That was kind of...
Well, here's an example.
thought.
This is from one of Jody's blogs from April 12th. The Chippewa Herald recently put its foot down, right on a few bugs, gadflies to be exact. That's the name the Herald has given to those who have persisted in expressing dissent over the current state of local affairs. Did you even know what a gadfly was before you got labeled one?
No, I had to look it up, which
I
I'm kind
got
of
called a
embarrassed.
bomb-throwing gadfly once. So
Well, I'm just a cobblestoner, so
I wear it as a badge of honor because Socrates, one of my heroes, Socrates was a gadfly in ancient Athens. So you looked it up, and what did you find?
Well, a persistently irritating, I can't remember exactly. It still is in my head that it's
stinger.
an insect. And
Yeah.
I was like, they're calling me a bug? I couldn't get over that. And it doesn't reek of intellectual capabilities either. I kind of
Well, you can link it back to
didn't
Socrates.
like that.
Socrates was the original gadfly.
Okay,
So you
well,
could tell them that.
I didn't have that.
It says, although I'm sure they didn't mean it. They didn't mean it as a compliment.
No, it wasn't.
You write, these insects have, according to the Chippewa Herald, have sapped the life out of the city council, have been effective in bottling up the city's plans, and their continued dissent will only further paralyze the council. They've actually said those things?
Those are
So let
false.
me get this right now. We're in a representative democracy, which means the people rule through their elected officials, correct? I just want to
Right.
make sure I'm not confused here. So you actually doing that is somehow going to paralyze the council.
Well, and the thing that just makes me irate about that particular little quote there is we haven't been able to succeed in slowing the process down 1 second.
Right,
We're
you say...
paralyzed. We have not attained one of our goals, and that's the honest truth.
Yes, Jody says, yet any honest assessment of the past year will show that the council has not been paralyzed or even slowed down in the least, in spite of obsessive and Herculean efforts on the part of crazed citizens. So you haven't really met your goals.
No, not at all.
So do they just not like to be, they don't have thick skins? They don't like to be criticized? I mean, what's the deal?
Oh, they hate it. They're really mad
So
at
that's
us.
what they're upset
They
about.
hate
You can't hurt their feelings. We go through this kind of crap in
Oh, yeah.
Oshkosh, don't we?
Oh yeah. All
You're
the time.
not, you're not allowed to speak up because you're stifling things. No one will invest in the city. Someone who might want to put in money for some project won't do it if you speak up. So the moment you exercise your rights, you might ruin the city. So we're all supposed to be
And
like
you're
little
a negative naysaying nabobber, or whatever Ted
nattering
Bowen.
nabomb of negativism.
Nattering nabob, whatever he
Don't
called
give
us. I don't
these
know.
people-
It was an exercise in alliteration.
We haven't heard this there yet, and you're just kind of feed it to them.
So what is there? I mean, what evidence do they put up to demonstrate that you've paralyzed the city?
None.
They tried to blame you for this one fellow not taking the job?
Yes. It actually might, I don't know if that has some basis in truth. And actually, if you think about it, a decent person, would they want to start a job where the citizens are feeling that their rights are being violated? You would think that a decent guy would say, that's not what I'm here for. I want to go where I'm wanted.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know
Yeah.
that necessarily means that we were evil or he was, terribly inconvenienced. I mean, if I wouldn't want a job like that. It might be true that the controversy did scare the guy off.
Yeah, and that sounds like someone who was just simply responding to the public.
I would say he was probably the most conscientious guy.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
my guess.
They say, or you write about the paper talking about you, further, these gadflies have not answered the question of how to make the city more efficient. And then you say, sure they have. It's not really their place and their ideas have no clout. But see if any of these sound familiar. And these are some of the things that you've thrown out as: quit incurring frivolous expenses in a time of crisis.
Boys, that sounds familiar.
We're experiencing deja vu here.
Okay.
Like the survey, the self-serving budget analysis, the doubled legal fees due to the council's bullheadedness, the increased cooperation with the trust and department heads, and okay, don't hire a guy to sit at the desk when you're firing other workers. So you are pretty pointed in your blog. What kind of response have you gotten to your blog from people in the city?
Some of it was at first overwhelmingly positive, and I guess I never answered your question, why did I start it? Because it was so disheartening, and the few of us, it is true that there are a few of us who are regularly active. That doesn't mean that it's just the few of us who are unhappy. I just started doing it kind of as an outlet and a form of encouragement. If you can't beat them, at least you can laugh at them. That was actually my only thought. I had heard that a few of the people who were feeling pretty stressed, I heard an employee was let out of City Hall, or a couple of them, told, get your purse, you're escorted out the building. That's really disturbing. Morale is low. People are worried about losing their jobs. So if I write something ridiculous and makes them laugh. Also, I guess if I have a bigger point, I feel really personally incensed by all forms of bullying, which I think that might sound, I don't know, I don't want to run over time here, but that's a huge subject. And I think people are so used to being bullied in like hierarchical systems that we have that they don't even know, they're not even aware of it.
So where was the bullying in this situation? You mean enforcing
all
the administrator
along the way.
on the public?
I think it's hugely bullying when people in power, if you're sitting in front of the council microphone and you have the ear of the press and you are guaranteed to be the one to get the little news blurb, you're rewriting people's reality, and maybe A is going on, but you don't want it to be that way, so you change it, and that's what gets put out to the public. Reality gets messed with. That can get really disheartening to just people at large, especially workers who are worrying about losing their jobs. Just the way everything gets shifted. Your perceptions aren't right. Let us interpret this for you. And here's the word on high. I hope I'm explaining this well. But so also with the blog, I wanted to, even though it's my view, and I openly admit it's my view, get it back away from the official word, the word that's being put out. Give the viewpoint of what a lot of people are really experiencing and feeling, which is frustration, a lack of being listened to, your government going out of control. And I think a lot of people really are concerned.
This is maybe a little bit of an unfair question, Jody, because I'm going to ask you to kind of speculate here a little bit.
Okay.
But what do you think Steve Hintz's motivation is? He's running a business. I'm sure that he would say, hey, look, this is my business. This is what I do. I believe in this form of government. This is the mission of my business, to help cities be responsibly and professionally run. Other than running a business and trying to do it successfully, what do you think his motivation is?
Well, I think, and this is based on, I've spent a lot of time doing research, going to like WCMA sites, and there are even larger national sites that are promoting what would be called...
WCMA is the Wisconsin City Management Association?
City, County Management, something like that. And then there are larger groups that are promoting professional government. It's definitely a philosophy.
Oh, yeah.
There are people who believe this is a good thing, and I am absolutely fine with people having their own belief systems. What I don't like is that it's not labeled, at least in our experience in Chippewa Falls, it's not labeled a philosophy. Here's my opinion, this is a viewpoint, this is a possible solution. It's like, this is expertise, this is objectivity, this is the way it's being done. So, it is a philosophy, and I think it's a philosophy that's driving his business. So he has this personal philosophy, there's a real fervor there. It's a personal opinion that is being inserted into various communities' governments through the business. I guess you can do that legally, but we're not a corporation. This isn't a private enterprise. This is a democratic government.
It's supposed to be anyway.
It is. You shouldn't just, we're not just an account. We're not just going to be a revolving door of administrators. You know, this one moves on, let's hire the next one. Who have we always gone to? We go to PAA, give them a call, get the next guy in. We are not just an account. This is not call your favorite realtor. This is our government. It's being usurped, in my opinion. It's being really taken away.
And so the option you said earlier of, say, having a full-time mayor,
Never discussed.
that was never discussed.
In maybe one or two councilmen, or maybe small groups of people have sat around and said, hey, what would that be like? But I mean, as far as a community-wide examination of pros and cons, I think there were some committee discussions, maybe.
So the choices that the public were faced with were either you stay with the system that you had, right, or you
I don't
move-
even think we were given that choice. We were just told, we've been discussing this in committee for a long time. We are now going to discuss this in regular council meetings. We've looked at this for a really long time. This is the way to go. Trust our judgment. That's definitely how I think it was handled. There was no community-wide discussion. There really was no discussion.
And the way the city was run before is you basically had no full-time mayor, you had no full-time
Right.
manager or administrator, because
Right.
this is new. The only full-time folks you had would be department heads.
Right, and so that's one of the selling points. Is there was a study by Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance saying that the need for for full-time administration is on the increase because of the increase in complexity and, you know, budget problems and all of that stuff. But that has been misrepresented to not full-time administration, which includes managers, administrators, and mayors, but to just mean administrator. So the word has changed from administration in the lingo in Chippewa Falls to administrator. So
You know, I was having a conversation with John Nichols of the Madison Capital Times. Maybe you've seen some of his columns. Great writer. And we were talking about this issue of professionalism in government. And the argument always is that, you know, times are so complicated
Right.
now that you have to have these professionals to do it. And John Nichols, who's a very, very progressive guy, right, said to me, do you think government could ever be more complicated than it was, say, in the 1930s? At the height of the Depression, right? Massive unemployment, massive problems in cities. And yet, our forefathers and foremothers got through it
Yeah.
without having to hire an expert to take care of it. This idea that somehow now in 2005, things have never been this complicated before. I think things get very complicated when you're in the heat of a depression. But that's very persuasive to people, isn't it? Oh, you know, you're right. I can't handle this. So we get a situation in Oshkosh, for example, where we're told that we can't run an amphitheater. We can't do it, right? We can't. I mean, there's no one to serve beer and hot dogs, and you know, trying to get bands to play at a venue, that's too complicated. I guess none of us have ever figured out how to get on a phone or anything like that.
No.
So you got right in case after case, there's got to be some professional you have to hire, usually from outside of your town, who will take care of this for you, and you will like it. And if you don't, you're but then you're cobblestoner, gadfly, 2%er, too negative, malcontent, Joe Lunch Bucket or whatnot. And I mean, you remember Warren Briggs, don't you? The late Warren
Yes,
Briggs. Okay,
yes.
he was a gentleman who never accepted the 1956 referendum that moved this city. We had a referendum, right? That moved this city to city manager, and he fought it many, many times to get it back to a mayor form of government and lost each time. But he told me before he passed away a couple of years ago, he said, you know, Tony, he said, I understand that Washington, D.C. is out of control. You expect that. Power, money, lobbyists and all that. He said, but a city of 50,000, the people can't run a city of 50,000? Right. That you have to have experts and lobbyists and whatnot. Now, you're a city of 12,000, 14,000?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
So the people of Chippewa Falls cannot run a city of 12, 14,000.
Well, yeah, I don't personally see anything inflammatory in people who have contact with day-to-day workings at City Hall saying, life really is complex. We need to do some restructuring. We'd like somebody who can act as a facilitator between department heads and newly elected people who have various levels of expertise and experience and maybe some agendas here and there of their own which may not be compatible. That wouldn't cause a flap. People wouldn't be upset about that. But when you have kind of this happy meal government where everything is handed to you, everything from let them have a referendum, yes or no, to placing the ads and writing the ordinance and everything that is so seductive to a council who is sitting there thinking, oh, you know, talk about making their paths smooth, talk about a sales pitch. They make it so easy. And even in the contract, he'll go through each line of his duties in the contract. Underneath will be a little blurb, on a little sales pitch. This is why you want this to happen. This will make it easier for you. Time and time again, the sales pitch for professional government is council members are too busy with their personal lives and their jobs. Why did they run? I mean, it just seems like it should be able to work. Are people in a time of crisis? Yeah. Are people not able, you know, the combined services, budget crunches, everybody has that. It's not just Chippewa Falls, it's not just mismanagement by a former council, everybody has that. We have this trillions of deficit, or I mean, I'm not up on so many things that I should be, but we're going to be feeling a lot of these things. That doesn't mean our form of government is an error. And I said the magic words, form of government. They don't allow you to say that because an administrator does not change your form of government.
Oh, right.
But what if you know, you can't talk to your husband directly? You have to talk to this middleman who will then interpret things to your husband. That changes your relationship. The relationship here with the citizens relating to their government is changed by the insertion of this middleman who, if you take a person and you restructure City Hall and you have sort of a middleman facilitator person who doesn't interfere with communication, or at least the process is involving the citizens, that would be one thing. But this is an outside thing that the council has been really persuaded to think that it is a great idea. And I think it's a really, really, really great idea for the people providing the service.
And I say if the public wants it, give the public an opportunity to vote for it. This is what your group asked for, right?
Yes, and we would have shut up.
I mean, if I were around in 1956 when Oshkosh voted to go to a city manager form of government, I would have voted against it, but the city voted for it.
Right, and you're done.
You live with it.
And I've said
Let
that.
the people speak.
I've said that. I was arguing with a guy in my blog, and he was giving all of these statements, and I said, do the referendum. You will shut me up. I don't have a leg to stand on. Nothing. You don't get anything back from that.
How many signatures did you have to get for the recall effort?
The recall or the referendum?
The referendum was, the number changes with each.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of the recall.
Okay.
That's just one ward, so I think maybe it's around 200, but I'm not sure.
All
but
right. And the referendum.
The referendum.
As long as Tony brought that up, what?
How many did you need for that?
It was a percentage of the people who had voted in the last governor's.
Presidential? Oh, governors.
Governor, I think it was governor. And we got upper 600s.
Okay.
The number changes depending on who's.
Sure.
Who's
Well, you know, I find it interesting that your council says they'll put a referendum on the ballot willingly before you go out and do all the legwork. Your city attorney sits there completely mute and doesn't say anything about it. But then after you've done all the legwork, then all of a sudden...
Oh, no, they didn't say they'd do a referendum. I'm sorry if I...
Oh, I thought...
No, they were adamantly opposed to it.
Okay.
Just totally against
no,
it. They were advised not to.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
I thought that you had said that they were either going to sit on it for 2 years.
That's what we had asked.
The position itself.
That's what we had asked in the referendum.
Okay, all right, okay.
In the petition, sorry.
My mistake, I misunderstood.
They were always violently opposed to a referendum.
What do you want people here in the Oshkosh area to, I guess, most think about, be aware of?
Well, that's a good question. what do I want them most to think about? You've been living with this type of
Yeah.
government, even though you have a manager, and people will jump on
Yeah.
me for that, for a long time. I don't know any of the circumstances that led to your having this form of government. You have a lot of the same problems, I think, that we do. I hear a lot of the same rhetoric. There was some citizen goal-setting meeting not too long ago, or maybe you could have almost said that those are a lot of Chippewa Falls goals also. I don't think there's a huge difference in problem levels, having had the manager versus us bumping along with these amateurs. I don't think that your form of government, based on things I've read that are stresses and strains here in Oshkosh, we have those same things. All of the ills that the professionals are supposed to cure seem alive and well here. I don't think it's a real strong selling point. This is probably overly personal, and maybe I shouldn't even go here, but just as an individual, I do not appreciate Mr. Hintz coming to my community and enabling such uproar. Did he cause it? No, I have to acknowledge that it's always been the council who voted
Right.
everything in. The
Right.
council
He's
is
doing
in
his job.
total control there.
Right, he's running his business.
Why are we in this power struggle with this third party? I think that is an absolute abomination, and it's very frustrating. I don't think a third party with a profit motive has any kind of ethical call to come into a community who they see as an account. You know, I mean, I've read a little bit. I understand that Gordon Hentz, when he ran for representative, spoke against cutting police and fire here. But that's cool in Chippewa Falls. You know, if that means that we can afford a city administrator, they can lose fire protection. But you know, it's you know, a touchy-feely Democrat when you're at home, and you're Genghis Khan when you're out there trying to make the account. This makes me angry. This is personally angering to me. I am upset. So here I am.
And I want to read your final two sentences from your April 12th blog, because the council has been upset. Some of the council's upset at your criticisms and others. And
Right.
I love the way you close this. In the course of implementing these plans, they, the council, have had the discomfort of dealing with legitimate opposition to their plans from citizens who do not agree with them. And I love this sentence. This is America. That's how it works here.
I don't think I have to feel
Yeah.
guilty or bad
I don't
for
think you said-
disagreeing.
You
Right.
absolutely shouldn't.
Right.
Well, Jody, this hour has flown by, but I want to thank you for coming
you.
over from your part of the state. Again, it was, you know, a few-hour drive, and I want to thank you for sharing your woes with us, because we have experienced many of the same. So thanks again for being here. And thank you to you. Thanks to Tony. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh. Take care.